Hello and welcome back to McClaren Performance. Manchester City have won the treble, they won the league, they won the FA Cup, they won the Champions League as well. But the question I guess everybody is asking is, are they as good as the 99 Manchester United team? So yeah, City have finally done it. City fans are buzzing. Man United fans absolutely devastated. Everybody else didn't really seem that bothered at all. Going back about a month or two ago when City pretty much won the league, it almost felt inevitable that this was going to happen. They were just playing so well. It's almost as if no team was really going to stop them. That's obviously been the case. I've been quite busy actually. I hadn't had a chance to do an episode last week, so I wasn't able to react to the FA Cup final when Manchester United actually lost. But I did go, I went to Wembley, had a good time in London, regardless of the fact that we lost that game. Partly also why I didn't do an episode on it is because there wasn't really that much to talk about. Manchester City, yeah, it was 2-1, and that looks like a close scoreline, but they were pretty dominant, and I don't think that was much to do with Manchester United not being at their best. I thought they played pretty well, but Manchester City, again, it's that inevitability. They are just so good at the moment. It just seemed a bit, when they actually won that game, disappointment, yeah, but mainly just that was the way it was going to go the entire time. I mean, it felt like that even before we conceded that goal, just in the first minute. The entire game really felt like that uphill battle. If you watch the game, tactically, whatever, Manchester United had to put so much effort into even just creating chances and to work so hard just to get the ball in the box, just get that one shot. It was always that uphill battle just to try and keep up and catch up with how competitive and how strong and how dominant Manchester City were the whole time. But yeah, there's only really so much you can say about a team being really good and obviously being the best is a bit boring to talk about. I think the really interesting thing to talk about is the comparison is now being made between this team at the moment in Manchester City and the team of Manchester United back in 1999. I mean, the only reason why I really think it's an interesting argument because it's a good way to compare what football once was to what now football is in a lot of different ways. For example, I often talks about good leadership and good captains and players like Roy Keane and others really within Manchester United. Those sort of leaders and captains don't really exist anymore. You can't identify in that Manchester City team at the moment a real top quality leader, at least one that isn't really evident from the outside. And that's a real change and shift in football. That's just one example really, because if you look also as well at just the ability, the individual ability of Manchester City players, it's hard to compare. A lot of people have made a good argument about that. For example, I guess I was only 3-4 years old when Manchester United actually won the treble, so I haven't really got much of an understanding of how they played back then, but you'd have to imagine there's such a big change in the quality, the ability, the size of players compared to what they were 20-25 years ago. I mean, 20-30 years ago, it's hard to say that players back then were really top quality athletes, certainly not in the way that football players are now. The aspect of like myself, psychology, nutrition, the coaching, S&C, the work of each individual player, the full-time job that goes into being a football player at the moment is nowhere near the same, I imagine at least, as what it was 20-30 years ago. And you see that difference in performance now because really the football that's being played now evidently is so much better than what it was once before. I mean, that goes for management and tactics as well. If you're going to compare a manager like Sir Alex Ferguson to Pep Guardiola, Sir Alex Ferguson really hailed as the man manager, being able to get his arm around the shoulder of every single player in that team, every member of staff, everybody, get them on board, have great relationships with everybody and motivate people to do unbelievable things and set those standards, and contrast that to a manager now who is a treble winning manager in Pep Guardiola, who yes may have those qualities, but someone who you would understand more as someone who has a great tactical understanding of the game, in that sense that the tactics, the statistics, the detail, everything that goes into football now is far beyond that of 20-30 years ago. On top of that, also the amount of money that goes into football now, the backing behind just individual football clubs is absolutely massive, and you can see that now in Manchester City being absolutely dominant, not just in how they're playing and what they're doing, but in how much money they can spend also, and how that means that yeah, they're pretty similar in regards to Manchester United. Other clubs spend a lot of money, but that in contrast to teams in the bottom half of the table, in the Championship, and the rest of the football tiers, it's absolutely ridiculous. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that it's a really stupid argument to say which team is better, because the football world has just changed so much. There's no real point in comparing at all. Of course, Manchester City right now are a better team than that Manchester United team in '99. And yeah, I haven't seen the team in 99 play football and analyse them properly, but I can guarantee that probably 100%. But it's also really a stupid argument because who really cares? I think what's more important is really the current situation of football right now. Like I said, the amount of money that goes into football now and the amount of money that's going into Manchester City specifically, and how dominant they are, especially in comparison to Manchester United and other teams like Liverpool, Chelsea, whatever teams you want to talk about really. The contrast is absolutely massive. And something I talked about with regards to psychology before, Manchester City specifically, is that something I always say really, that to win something the first time is absolutely the hardest thing to do, because the psychological aspect of that, the getting so close and being able to stay calm if it's still the first time you're doing something like that, is really difficult. But having done something like that, from there, if you keep that drive, it only gets easier and easier because you're able to stay calm, you know the process, and you've done these things before. And you look at Manchester City at the moment, to me, they don't really look like a team that's kind of satisfied, even though it's taken them 7 years in their journey of developing what they've been developing under Pep Guardiola. Could argue maybe at the end of that. To me, if it carries on as is, it kind of just seems like the beginning of an even more dominant era for Manchester City, and that's probably a big problem for every club within the Premier League, or just fans in general like myself who enjoy watching football with every team for the most part, because they are going to be massively dominant, I imagine, going forward. Not treble winning every year or anything like that, but to really continue carrying on the way they are is not a good thing for everyone other than a Man City fan, really. Because I'll tell you what is really different from football now compared to 20 years ago is that, for example, when City won that FA Cup, and I was there as well, when City won the Champions League, everything like that, winning the treble, it didn't really seem to be that. So complaint has cut City quite a lot, but they're very new. They don't have a great amount of fans. They don't really have that massive history behind them. They're not a big club in that sense. And I think in moments like this, it kind of shows. And that's not to be like just critical just because they're jealous because, you know, it's supporting Manchester United or anything. But I think there is a real difference there. And I think there's a real change in football where if money like this is going to come into football, I hope it doesn't really take away from what is the history of football and the connection that fans have to it. What I mean is it's a treble win, you know, for a club, for those fans that support them, that's fantastic, but it ultimately kind of does feel hollow and not exactly the same as any other team making such a great achievement like that, especially in that run into the treble as well. It seemed inevitable. It didn't really seem like an achievement in that sense, whereas if a Manchester United done it 20 years previously, it certainly did feel like a massive achievement then. One thing I just wanted to add while I'm editing this is that I think something I didn't say was that it seems like in the past, clubs were successful because of the backing that they had from their fans, and that's why they grew, that's why they developed, that's why they got bigger, and that's why they got more successful. And it seems a bit the opposite these days, whereby clubs are bought and then fan bases are grown after the fact. And I think that kind of takes a bit of the heart out of football. So technically, Manchester City are pretty much a better team than that Manchester United 99 team. But the big difference is that what this City team don't have is that story, that struggle, that narrative of doing something that nobody else has ever achieved before. What they don't have also, I guess, is the narrative, the story, the history, the culture, the values that a club like Manchester United has. And will that club ever build anything like that is probably a big question. And is that really important at the end of the day? If selling tickets, you're making a profit as owners, you're getting what you want out of it, maybe that's just all City really need. But then that goes to the question of what's the point of football at the end of the day. Comment and let me know if that made any sense at all. I think it made sense to me. I think it's maybe what a lot of people are feeling about this treble win at the moment. It doesn't feel like groundbreaking news. It doesn't feel like something groundbreaking happening. It kind of feels like a sad, inevitable thing that's happening to football, where it loses that attachment to its culture and its roots, and it just goes far beyond that. But yeah, thank you for watching and listening. Like I said, let me know what you think, and I will see you again hopefully next week.